A man once said, if you want a good story, just ask any random person if there was ever an event in their life they could not explain. Someone almost always has one weird thing that has happened to them. So, regardless of whatever you believe about the world, what's your story? Back in college, some friends and I were renting a house near campus. It had a walk-up attic that we were going to convert to another bedroom, but decided against because everyone felt creeped out up there. We ended up putting a heavy trunk wedged in next to a large bookcase in front of the door to make sure no guests accidentally opened it and went up there. One day, we came home from a party, and my buddy tripped over the trunk that was now partially sticking out from the wall. We were confused as heck, wondering who pulled the trunk away from the wall. We turned on the lights and noticed paint chips and pieces of wood all over the trunk and floor. It looked like someone had been slamming the attic door against the trunk, trying to push it away so they could get out, but gave up because it was wedged in against a bookshelf. It was a bad neighborhood, so we freaked out a bit, thinking a crackhead or something had tried to break in. We gathered ourselves and found enough blunt, sharp objects to give us the confidence to check it out. We went up there. Nothing. Literally nothing. No crackheads, no squatters, no windows, no chimney, no missing roof, nothing. No way for someone to get in or out. Our attic door slammed against the heavy trunk hard enough to splinter part of the wood seemingly by itself, and for no reason. Lost a full 3 hours in over the course of what should have been about 30 minutes. Me and my friends were camping at a recreational area that was about 10 minutes from the nearest town. We ran out of hot dogs and buns, so we were all pretty starving. Me and 2 other friends elected to drive down to town and drive back. A quick 30-minute drive that would have had us happily around the campfire in no time. We pile in, drive down, grab exactly what we need, and head back. As soon as we get to camp, we're being yelled at by our friends claiming that we were gone for almost 3 to 4 hours, and that they would have starved to death had we not arrived. We were confused, as we had practically rushed to and from the grocery store with the supplies. Heck, the hot dogs still felt like they were just barely taken out of the fridge. Most confusing moment of our lives. The time also lined up with what they were claiming. We had left around 6:30 and had arrived back at 10:15. There was no traffic, roadblocks, or any sort of obstacles inhibiting our driving, and we had rushed to and back as I was admittingly going over the speed limit. I even remember at one point having to momentarily slow down when we passed by a cop car on the road. While at most an hour would seem logical for a short trip like that, It's strange how 3 hours were also lost in that time. There's no way we spent that long in a grocery store, especially considering we walked in, grabbed exactly what we needed, and left. When we arrived back, the several bundles of firewood we had grabbed for the trip had all been used up, with them throwing in dead sticks and pine needles from the area into the fire to keep it alive. These guys are experienced enough in camping to know not to toss everything in at once. So the fact that a couple hours worth of firewood had been used up too meant they had been at it for a while. They genuinely thought we had up and left them to go back home, and it looks like they were about ready to pack everything back up and leave if so. We were also unable to contact them during this time because the campsite was in the middle of nowhere with no signal ready to call or text back. With no signal to really call or text back. In the morning, we measured the amount of time it took to get back to town and over to that grocery store we were at. Heck, we even tried to take our time going down the road. And it took us a little less than 20 minutes. When I was 6, my mom was driving my 3 siblings and me somewhere home during rush hour traffic. She ran out of gas on a major highway. We panicked for a while. My siblings were freaking out. This was about 20 years ago. After about 10 minutes or so, my mom's brick phone had died and we were basically stranded in rush hour with 4 kids in a major highway. Eventually, someone stops. I remember it so clearly. He was this tall black man with a white beard and white hair, wearing a white suit, driving a big cream-looking Lincoln-type car. He had this incredibly calm demeanor. He pulls a gas tank out of his back seat that has virtually nothing else in it besides the gas can, and said he'd be back in 10 minutes. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, by some miracle, this guy drives through the grassy median and crossed 4 lanes of rush hour traffic going 70 miles per hour with the gas. My mom asked for his phone number to repay him and send him a thank you note, and he gave us his business card. He was a pastor at a church. A couple days later, my mom looked into it, called the number which was disconnected. She called around in the area it was supposedly located in, and residents said they'd never heard of it. The church basically didn't exist. To this day, every time I retell it, I get chills. I once saw a homeless man walking toe-to-toe on the curb on a busy street. He heard a truck coming and bolted right in front of it. I saw the truck slam its brakes to avoid hitting the guy, but it wasn't possible because the truck was speeding. I looked away briefly because I didn't want to see the guy on the pavement and grabbed my phone to call 911. The guy wasn't on the pavement. He also wasn't on the other side of the street. He was gone. This was in broad daylight, about 4 p.m. in the middle of summer. The homeless guy looked like a solid body, and there wasn't anything ghostly or shadowy about him. Just looked like a normal, real human being. One of my jobs when I was young, 18, was at a Coney Island style restaurant in my city. The restaurant was open 24/6. We closed at 3 a.m. Sunday morning. Reopened at 6 a.m. Monday morning, but stayed open all the time the rest of the week. This particular thing happened at about 2:30 a.m. on a Friday. I was the only waitress on shift, and the owner was in the kitchen cooking. We were the only two people there. At the time, we had a regular I'll call Jerry. Jerry was a barfly and a senior citizen. He would come in every night after the bar closed. He would have coffee, 2 eggs over easy, and wheat toast. He ordered the same thing every time, and every time his total came to $4.37. He'd give me $6 and tell me to keep the change. So, as I'm rolling silverware and waiting for our old pal Jerry, I see a few emergency vehicles go down the main street towards the bar. Lights and sirens on. About a minute later, Jerry comes in. I get him coffee and ask him if he knows what's going on. He just shook his head no. So I told my boss Jerry was there, and my boss waved at him through the kitchen window, and within 3 minutes, Jerry's order was up. He's sitting at the counter, and after a little while, he slaps down some money and says, "Keep the change, honey," like he usually did, and walks out. I went over to cash out the check, and the food hadn't been touched. Neither had the coffee, and there was a $100 bill on the counter. I was a teen mom and perpetually broke, so that much money was basically life-changing at the time. I saw in the paper on Sunday that Jerry had been involved in a fight at the bar that night and had been fatally injured.